Hey, this is Rocket Brain Surgeon. Today we're looking at the T-34-2. We're following Garbat around. He's actually going to do two variants of the tank. There are actually two guns that are viable. The first we're going to look at is the 122 millimeter. The large benefit of the 122 is that it has 390 alpha, and on a tier 8 medium tank, that is really good. You hit as hard as a heavy, but you have that excellent mobility and camouflage that's typical of the Chinese tanks. So it tries to blend the best of both worlds. In practice, it depends on who you talk to, but it is more or less effective. The difficulty with the 122 is its horrid aim time. Everybody agrees on that. It also has terrible accuracy as well. So a lot of the times the tank ends up hitting nothing. There will be games where you just have 0 damage because you can't hit the broadside of a barn. But when it works, it is very impressive and it keeps you coming back for more. 400 alpha is enough to be an incredibly significant threat to lower tier tanks. And it is even great on higher tier tanks, making them respect you with that camouflage and with that mobility. You can pop up in just the craziest places to deliver a very sharp blow to the enemy. There are, of course, going to be games where you have a full reticle like this and you just let a shot fly and pen the KV-4 200 meters in front of you. That's going to happen some games. Most games, though, you're probably just going to derp that shot into the ground. I think it was a good shot that he took because he didn't need the shell anyway, and the KV-4 was disappearing behind cover. But that's not something that the tank can do consistently. Another downside of the big gun on the T-34-2 is that it only has 3 degrees of gun depression. Yes, that is right. That is horrible. I find 5 degrees acceptable, and a lot of people even hate that. I mean, notice where he did bring the T-34-2, a very flat area with no hills and a lot of peekabooming. He certainly did not take it on the south side of the tracks. With all those hills, that probably would not be the best plan. It's too bad that the gun depression is very low on the tank because the tank features a pretty hard turret that is capable of bouncing a lot of shots. The tank is also incredibly small. This tank is teeny tiny when you line it up next to its peers. The mobility is excellent on the T-34-2 as well. It gets up to speed, goes through a variety of terrain, turns, does pretty much everything that you want of a platform. Again, it has that excellent camouflage too. The difficulty with the front hull is it's slightly thin, about 80 millimeters thick, maybe 90. It's not going to bounce a lot of shots, but it does have some angles, so it does keep the door open for that possibility. As we can see here, you have to pretty much go up and over the top of the hill to try and get a shot off. You can't just peek your turret over. The gun depression just won't let you. However, the good thing is if you have to trade shots with another medium tank, that's fine because you just hit harder than they do. To minimize the horrible aim time, try to pull straight out and straight back with very little track traverse, that's turning left or right. That will keep the reticle relatively small so you can peek over, only take 1 or 2 seconds to aim in the last bit, and then fire the shot. Notice he's going straight back, straight out. The final thing to note about the 122 is it does use heat for its premium round. It only has 250 millimeters of penetration. That's not going to be a lot when you're facing tier 10 tanks, but it definitely will do the job in most tier 8 and tier 9 games. Next up, let's look at the 100mm versus the 122. In this game, the 100mm is equipped. It has better gun depression, slightly higher damage per minute, much better accuracy and aim time, and does have the definite advantage of having APCR as the premium round rather than heat. Now, the gun depression goes from completely terrible to mildly not great, or really bad, whatever your view on 5 degrees of gun depression is. Either way, you can see that he's using the terrain to point his tank down as the gun depression itself is not there. So maybe we can't call it good. It's definitely in that bad category. The other downside to the 100mm versus the 122 is there is less alpha, so it's 240 alpha rather than 390. So this is going to be more of a traditional medium tank. It's going to hit as the traditional medium tank is, and so forth. When we start to look at it in the traditional medium, that's kind of where the wheels come off for me. So the mobility and camouflage is similar to a T-34. The T-34 is an incredibly mobile tank. It has a little package, and the fire control is much better than the T-34-2. And so I'd actually prefer the T-44 because it has that better gun depression and because the fire control is that much better. People sometimes, I've heard it referred to as speed armor, where you just are not going to be present when the shell comes flying by. You peek out, you take aim really quickly, you let the shot go, and you're back into cover before you're even spotted, or before even they get their turret around. The T-34-2, yeah, it does have that camouflage, so you can aim mostly unseen, but there are times where you're going to be seen and they're going to be able to return fire before you even get your shot off because your fire control is just so bad. Also, you have to expose more of your tank because of that terrible gun depression. So even something like the Type 59, which has a slightly harder turret than the T-34-2, it has a lot better gun depression with the same 100mm gun, which allow it to not expose itself quite so much. So this is a role which the T-34-2 has difficulty performing well in. So even if the 100mm is considered a better gun, I'd rather play with the 122 because I don't want to knowingly play with a worse T-44, if that makes sense. Since the armor on the tank is very inflexible, they have to hit your turret, and even then, some of the larger penetration guns, 240 plus, is just going to go right through. Since of the inflexible armor layout, I generally play it akin to a light tank, where I have some decent kind of firepower. So probably somewhat similar to a 1390, where you don't want to be seen because of the terrible fire control. I use the 122, and I just try not to be seen and try to shoot and use that mobility to come up and pop up in locations where they're not going to expect me. And in that role, it does okay. However, there are just going to be some times when you're in a medium where the other guy sees you and you're going to have to try and get your shot off before he gets his off, and it's not going to be possible. In other news, fire extinguishers are way too expensive. Might as well burn to death. At any rate, I think the T-34-2 is fairly good. It's just missing a little bit of something more, whether it's just a little more gun depression or a little bit better turret armor. Something has to be there to make this more effective and make you want to choose it more than, say, the Pershing or the 416, or sadly even the Type 59. Garbad wrote up a full review of the T-34-2, link in the comments. Go check it out. Hope you enjoyed. Happy hunting.